Hey everybody, welcome back to the garage. Today we will be working on the Ninja 400. It's a 2019 and we will be installing Swingarm Spools on the back of it. This should work for any 2018 model or newer. I got my set off of Amazon. I usually get most of my stuff off Amazon. For the Ninja 400, you will be using an 8mm bolt here, but this set came with a 6mm and the 10mm, so you'll be using the 8mm. You will also be using the spacer here because there's a little indentation where the bolt screws into, so you need this spacer to offset that little amount. That way this spool will sit on there flush. A couple pro tips. First, you're gonna wanna blow out this little bolt hole here with some compressed air. There tends to be a lot of dirt and grit that gets stuck inside of there, so it can affect the way the bolt goes in. You're also going to want to use some thread locker to tighten the bolt down in there and keep it in place. Motorcycles have a lot of vibration and it can cause the bolts to vibrate loose. And you don't want to be going down the road and lose a spool and then come home to clean your chain and find out you can't even prop it up on the stand. Assembly of this is as follows. Take your bolt, it may come in a black spacer like this, and take your spool, goes through like that. Then take your spacer, goes through like this, making sure that the smallest part of the spacer is towards the threads. Then take your O-ring here, slide that over the edge, push it all the way down, and it's ready to go. We'll do the same thing with the other one here. Oops. There we go. So I got some blue thread locker on there. The color of the thread locker isn't hugely important. You don't really need a thermal one, but I like to start these by hand. You should always start bolts by hand. Make sure you're not cross-threading them. Then we'll go ahead and lightly screw this in. And then you'll feel it get tight. I looked all around for a torque spec on this, but I couldn't find one. A lot of people said just nib it up, so I'll just give it a little squeeze there. Some people recommend just using a general torque spec for an 8mm bolt. You could do that as well, but there we go. Easy as that. Let's do the other side. All right, next side. I'll go ahead and get this started by hand. There we go. Put our hex key in. And we're screwing it in again by hand. You don't want to put a ratchet on this until it's all the way seated down, but just to make sure that you're not cross-threading this. There we go. And I'll go ahead and attach my ratchet on the end of this and just nib it up like that. And you're done. You're going to notice that one of these stands is narrower and it's also shorter. This is going to be your front stand with these two attachments here. And then you're going to notice the other one is wider and it's also taller, right? So if you think about it, the swing arm on the back of the motorcycle is wider than the forks in the front. And so you're going to need this wider space, and you'll put the attachments for the swing arm spools onto this one. When adjusting the width of your rear stand, it helps if you take your motorcycle and prop it up on a piece of 2x4 over here so it stands up a little more straight, and that'll make it easier to bring your stand in and really line it up with the spools on your swing arm. Another thing to keep in mind, if you look at the end of this slot here, it's flat. That's where your adjuster bolt should screw into. That way this doesn't rotate on you when you lift the bike up. It keeps it locked in that position. If you flip them around and do it backwards like I originally had, then you have the bolt screwing onto this rounded surface, and then these will tend to rotate. So don't do that. Then, once you're done putting it all together, use that 2x4 under the kickstand on the side to help straighten it up. It'll help you prop it up for your very first time. It can be a little nerve-wracking. But then you want to look right here, make sure it's grabbing those spools right in the center, which it is. So I know I have the adjustment on this set up just right, and we're ready to start cleaning our chain today. Yay. Once you have the back end propped up, then you can straighten out your front wheel, and it becomes easier to adjust the little props on the sides here. On the Ninja 400, the fork is pretty narrow, so I had to pull it out all the way and insert the cotter pin here at its most narrow setting. And then you also want to make sure that you're attaching these on the right side. So most of the weight should be coming down the fork onto this pin, and this one in the back sits higher up, and it just props and supports the back part of that fork there. Another thing to keep in mind, be really careful when you're bringing this fork support in, because you can scratch your rotor sliding it in, and you don't want to do that. I readjusted the lift to show you how it should properly lift back here. You don't want it lifting up by this ABS sensor here. If your motorcycle comes equipped with that, you want it to sit behind the fork there and have all the weight sitting right there. Admittedly, this isn't my favorite kind of front lift for motorcycles. Ideally, you want to get one that comes in and attaches under here to your triple clamp. That way it supports the bike up here, and you can even take the forks out of the motorcycle if you're doing like a fork oil change. So I would opt for one of those if you can, but this front lift came as part of a set, so I decided to get it. Well everyone, that's about the end of today's video. Thanks for sticking around to the end of this tutorial on how to install spools on the rear swing arm, as well as learning a little bit on how to put some bike stands together and how to get them on the bike for your very first time. If you have any tips on how to make this process faster, or any tips in general, I'd love to hear them. And any questions you might have, you can throw those down in the comments as well. All right, we'll see you guys in the next video.